Glad you can join us today. We are going to be talking today about risk-based thinking. So one of the things to consider is that the FDA has been pushing us for several years to be more proactive in our assessment of risk. We have quality by design, a lot of the stuff from manufacturing coming in, building quality in, thinking critically. And we have applied some of these tools that GMP uses to try to build that quality in. But sometimes we kind of think of like a CAPA, for example, as a new note to file system. So we're going to discuss how we use these tools, how we can critically assess what we're finding. Oftentimes our monitors are going out and finding things, but not appreciate the significance of what they're finding. And because of that, not able to kind of raise the alert, and things are not being addressed. So we're going to think about how monitors can work to develop an auditor's perspective. And with that, we know that monitors get to go out there a lot more than we go out as auditors. And we appreciate that, when we audit behind a good monitor, it makes our life easier because we're there to check that all of those systems are functioning. We're not there to remonitor. So we've got to think about critically assessing items rather than just doing an inventory of items. I liken it to when we have gathered all of our essential documents from all of our sites and our investigator site files, and then we put it in the trial master file and everything is there. And all the documents that we need are physically there, but no one has actually done a review of them. There's inventory. We know we have X out of X financial disclosure forms, but no one's checked to see if anyone actually signed them or if there has been anything that needs to be disclosed. So there's monitoring where we go in and we look at information and we compare and we look at the data. But there's monitoring also that critically assesses the quality systems that are generating that data, which is really an auditor's perspective. And we want to make sure that we are in alignment with what the FDA and other regulatory authorities have told us is a better way to approach monitoring. So we're going to talk about auditing techniques to be used while performing our monitoring tasks to find quote unquote proper monitoring and who is responsible for its conduct. We'll look at monitoring findings within the context of regulatory risk. We'll also look at some standard monitoring report templates and discuss ways to adapt them to develop a compliance assessment. And these are always evolving. So depending upon whose you pull down, there certainly might be a difference. But we'll talk about making sure it's tailored to the risk inherent with your protocol and product and population and policies and people and procedures and past experience. So we'll talk about the processes for discerning patterns in information reviewed. Sometimes we get so far down in the weeds, we don't look up enough to see, hey, I'm actually seeing this all over the place. So we'll also look at methods for developing monitoring tools that facilitate a systems review and how we communicate our findings so that they're effective in quality control. An audit. Quality assurance. An audit is a systematic and independent examination of trial-related activities and documents to make sure that we have met our regulatory obligations, to make sure we do have credible data from protected subjects. And you'll note even ICH posits it as a retrospective process. With quality by design, those are things we're throwing the QA piece in there earlier. But the FDA still considers quality assurance units to be optional within sponsors. So we know that if we're optional, right, when push comes to shove, we're not always going to be the ones sitting at the table. But monitoring is a regulatory requirement. Ensuring proper monitoring is a sponsor's regulatory obligation. So how do we take this information, what we know about monitoring and auditing, and make it work so that we meet our goals? Good data from protected people. Quality assurance or auditing are planned and systematic actions. So you see that word again there, systematic, that are established to make sure that we're compliant. And we're all interested in compliance. Monitors, auditors, regulatory authorities. Monitoring is the act of overseeing the progress of a trial and making sure that it is being conducted in accordance with the regulations and guidelines and SOPs and GCP. It is an in-process task. So you are there during the processing of the data. We want to make sure that we're not just focused on the data, but the systems that generate that data. I had a class earlier this morning, and we were talking about a warning letter that went out to an investigator for failing to maintain adequate and accurate records. And the FDA cited this investigator because they had a computer system that generated their data, but didn't have backup and disaster recovery. So when the computer crashed, the investigator didn't have any data. And we have to ask, why was this investigator selected as a site? There are a lot of times we go out and audit and we question that. When we're auditing at a site, for example, we're looking at how everything comes together. We're looking at the IRB, the sponsor, the monitor, and the investigator. Oh, thank you so much, Cecilia. I appreciate that. So knowing that we are looking at monitors and auditors, right, we need to be separate and independent from one another. But look around the room. We all have the same common goal. As auditors, we're not there to police anyone. We're there to make sure we all get what we need. That good data from protected people, which ultimately leads to a product that we can use in the public and support the public's health. So monitoring, certainly is something that's required by regulations. Auditing, they don't need us till they need us, and then they really need us. So we have to question that, right? Where do we fit in? Where does quality assurance look at all of these pieces working together?